Hi, everybody. My name is Pat. I'm alcoholic. Grateful to be here. Eric, thanks for taking Jose's suggestion and asking me. Andy, thanks for letting Eric ask me, I guess. Thanks to you guys for letting me be a member of this home group. This is my home group. I've learned that that's an important thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, is to have a home group, a place that I'm committed to show up regularly to and be willing to be of service. So the statistics, my sobriety date is January 6th, 1989. Got a home group, got a service position at the home group, and I've had several positions. I've been a member at this group for about 5 years. I'm currently treasurer. I've been the announcements guy. I've done coffee. My favorite one was the cleanup crew. I really liked doing that with this group. We used to go in and empty the trash cans in the bathroom and all that and take them out the dumpster, and I thought that was like the perfect job for a guy like me, because you couldn't tell people that's what you were doing. But now I don't do it anymore, so I can tell you about it, that I did it. And I have a sponsor. His name is Alan. He's been my sponsor since 2008. Talked to him this morning. When I asked him to sponsor me, he asked me to call him every day, and he hasn't told me not to, so I call him Monday through Friday. I give him weekends off from me. Call him 7 o'clock his time. He's in Phoenix. He's been my sponsor for whatever that is. Longest I've had a sponsor, I think. I've had basically 5 sponsors, and hopefully you'll hear some of that, too, in the time I've been sober. I sponsor some guys. I probably am called a sponsor to more guys than I know. I think Ann said that one time when she shared here, right? I'm aware of several that I sponsor, and a bunch of them are here tonight, which is cool. And I believe that that's key to staying sober, is being willing to give away what's been freely given to me. I don't believe that I could stay sober if that ever stopped. So, I will mention that my wife and daughter are here tonight, so awesome. Claire and I have been married for 30 years. Claire. Yeah. Claire and I have been married for 30 years. You'll probably hear a little bit about that. And Sylvia's been around for a little less than that. So, but it's exciting that they were willing to come and hang out with me, that we had that kind of relationship, right? Which is a gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, how did we get here? What was I like? What happened? And what am I like now? In a general way. Go. So I grew up in Ohio, Southern Ohio, Dayton, Cincinnati area. I got a younger brother, 2 years younger than me. And we were always tight, and we are still really tight. We could practically be twins. Like, if you hear us on the phone, you can't tell which one of us is the loud jerk talking. So he's a great guy, and I love my brother. Had a dad. You'll hear about that a little bit. Got a mom. So we grew up in Dayton, Ohio for the most part. And Dad had his own deal with alcohol, and that was a factor for sure in our home. But it didn't have anything to do, other than there may be, some of the scientists or whoever can tell you, there may be some genetic predisposition to becoming alcoholic, right? So, but my dad didn't make me alcoholic. I want to be clear about that just up front. So, I'm 12 years old. It's like, Thanksgiving break or some half day of school in the fall of whatever that is, 7th, 8th grade, when you're 12 years old. And I'm hanging out with my friends. We're down in Casey's basement, and one of the guys pulls out a bottle of whiskey. And we're going to drink whiskey today. And I knew I'm not supposed to drink, but I'm hanging out with the boys, my friends, and I'm not the kind of kid who's going to stand up and say, this isn't the right thing to do. Already by the time I'm 12. So the bottle of whiskey comes around, and I'm like, okay, I want to be cool like the other kids. So I take a hit of this whiskey, and I get goosebumps every time I tell this. I mean, it was unlike anything I'd ever put in my body before. It burned my throat going down, and it was just like this whoosh. A guy, an AA speaker, used to talk about it. It was like rocket fuel, I became taller, I became funnier, I became smarter, I became better looking, stronger. Just all the bad things about me fell away, and all the good things were just like magnified, and I fit in a way that I had never fit. Just like the first freaking hit on that bottle, man. And so it came around again, and I was like, let's do that again. I get goosebumpy about it. And I had a great 12-year-old drunk day. Nothing bad happened. I didn't puke my guts out. I didn't get caught. Nothing. As I recall, we went up to the school. We broke into the gym. We played some soccer in the gym, and I was great, and it was just fun. Just had a fun time, and I was like, I will do that again, And I didn't become a daily drinker at 12. That wasn't my story, but I was like, I will do that again. And like a year later, I'm leaving school one day, and this guy's like, hey, man. And we had these woods by the school, and he's like, come on, try this. And so he handed me something, and I smoked this, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it didn't do to me what alcohol did to me, did for me. I wasn't opposed to what we did. I just didn't love it as much as I instantly fell in love with alcohol. Today I have a love affair with Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a love affair with alcohol. I just did. So through high school, I had a lot of overly drunken experiences. I seemed to be a kid who, once he started drinking, couldn't control the amount he was going to drink. Always got way beyond drunk, the necessary amount of drunk, just beyond, blew way past the good buzz and just blew right past it, just always puking, always blacking out like in my teens. And one night at some party being super drunk and some guy pushes a girl and you shouldn't do that, and next thing you know I'm getting my butt whipped because I told this guy he shouldn't push a girl, and he just beats the crap out of me, and friends dump me in the front yard, and my dad takes me to the ER as I'm puking my guts up the street to the ER, and you'd think you might learn a lesson. Maybe you shouldn't drink that much. I'm not the kind of... There's something about me that doesn't learn the lesson. That you maybe ought not to do that. I had a pretty serious girlfriend for 6 years, 16 to 22, whatever. And I drank, through all of that, of course. And I remember at 17 or 18 telling that girl, I won't drink liquor anymore. I'll only drink beer. At 17, 18 years old, bargaining to try and be okay with this deal. Because it was a problem. But I couldn't do that. Within a year or two, somehow or another, I was driving around in my car with a bottle of Bacardi 151 under the driver's seat. That's who I am. That's who I am. Straight out of the bottle, and it's, it'll get you there. So, that's me with alcohol. And it just became an important part of my life, and certainly it didn't work out well at home. It caused a lot of conflict. And I had a father who was frequently also drunk, and lots of nights I would come home drunk and he'd be home drunk, and it didn't go well. We had a lot of toe-to-toe stuff, and I would just you want to hit me, why don't you? Just back and forth, just all this stuff, just up in my face, and just not great. And my brother and my mother kind of being like, what the heck's going on here? And I got through high school. Back up a little to high school stuff, because I was part of the deal. We had a vocational program in my high school. There was a radio program. And so junior and senior year in high school, I was in this radio program. Half a day, every day, I was in the radio thing. And I really think that's the only reason I graduated from high school, was because I spent a quarter of my high school in radio, doing radio labs. And we had a radio station and doing all this stuff. And I was pretty good at it. I was pretty gifted with it. And a friend of mine, his brother was a DJ, which there used to be this thing called DJs in the radio. And he worked at the radio station. And one day this guy calls one of our friends who was also in the radio program. Hey, the radio station's hiring somebody for Sunday mornings, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. to do public service programming, blah, 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 blah. That's how you would start out. And so the guy calls me, my buddy Dave calls me and says, hey, so I told Dave I'd give him 24 hours head start to go apply for the job, and then I was going to go apply for the job. And Dave was actually my drunk friend who I was like, if I ever get as bad as Dave, I'm going to have to quit. Dave had the shakes in high school. Dave had it bad. And Dave, of course, didn't call, and so I called, and I went down, and I ended up getting this job at this radio station. So I started doing this 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Sunday mornings, public service radio, and they gave me a 15-minute slot at the 8:45 to 9 a.m. that I could actually DJ and spin maybe 3 records. It was a rock and roll radio station. It was heaven. I was in heaven. And I went from that to getting a Friday night shift from midnight to 6 in the morning, and the Saturday night from midnight to 9 in the morning, and then Sunday nights from 8 p.m. to midnight. So I was actually DJing on the radio, taking calls and what do you want to hear, acting like I was going to play your song, which I was never going to play your song. But I would do that, and I loved it. I loved the life. You got access to concerts and to meeting famous people and all this stuff. And I'm like 18, 19, 20 years old, and it was amazing. And this is what I'm going to do. And when I'm 20, my dad's drinking had gotten bad enough. He'd been kicked out of the house. He went through all the classic stuff that we go through. Kicked out of the house, restraining orders, jails, institutions, all that stuff. And when he was 47 and I was 20, my dad killed himself because he couldn't take it anymore. I think he left a note that said, I can't stay drunk and I can't quit drinking and I can't keep drinking. And my dad killed himself. And that messed me up. I will say that I didn't handle that well. I mean, within an hour of the cops showing up at our house to tell us they found his body, I was on the phone to my boys. Hey, they found my dad dead. I need to go get drunk. I'm off and just gone. And so I had this cool radio station job, but I was spinning out of control. It was just off to the races. And this rumor came to me that they were going to offer me full-time at the radio station. And I was like, I can do the weekends. But there's no way I can show up 5 days or 5 nights in a row. I knew at 20 years old. I knew there was no way that I could pull it together. And so as much as I wanted to have that and do that and have that be a part of my life, I walked into that radio station and said, I got to quit. I'm going to go back to school, is what I said. But what it was there's no way I can show up and do this. There's no way I can show up 5 days a week and do this thing. So I gave up my dream for my alcohol. And spent the next 3 years just kind of getting worse. because I walked away from that. I ended up down in Cincinnati, chased that girl that I mentioned down to Cincinnati. How do you get roommates? Well, I go in bars and I meet guys and I need a place to live. And so I found places to live with guys that I met in bars drinking. And so that's, just the life that I had. Trying to go to school, didn't ever work out. End up just basically by the time I'm 23 years old, I'm subletting rooms in places to live. So subletting is like other people are renting the house, and then I'm renting from one of the renters, basically, because I can no longer because I don't pay bills and I don't show up for stuff on time on a regular basis, so I can't put my name on a lease or on utilities or any of that stuff. So I just have to kind of find a way to get a place to live. So I sublet there was this whole culture of people would live a place for a quarter and then go off for a quarter and come back. And so I found ways to live in those places. So I'm subletting rooms in these houses. I'm working jobs that pay cash under the table so that at the end of the day, and I don't have to show up on time for them, and at the end of the work period, whatever that is, I get handed some cash so that I can go drink. That's pretty much where I ended up. I also, at 22, I was working in this restaurant. I was working at a pizza restaurant, summer, Southern Ohio, hot, sweaty, pulling pizzas out of the oven, making $7 an hour, not saving any money, hating my life. And one of the waiters walks by and says something about he's in the National Guard and they pay for his college. And I'm like, oh, what? And 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane to Columbus, Georgia to go to infantry school. Signed a 6-year contract in the National Guard. Don't know anything about anything, but I heard they would pay for all of my school if I did this deal. And that's somehow going to fix it, right? And I did thrive in the basic AIT environment, I will say. I had structure and direction and even purpose, I was a part of a group of people doing something. And I thrived in that environment. I was really, really a really good trainee, soldier trainee. When there was a drill sergeant breathing down my neck and not letting me think for myself. I was really good at that stuff. So I did that thinking that maybe that would fix stuff and make things okay. It didn't work. It didn't work either. So I was doing that National Guard thing, so I had that, and I was working these jobs and subletting these rooms and just drinking all the time and just doing stuff I don't want to do and living a life I don't want to live. And just to cut to the chase, so maybe I'd get sober. I'd been experiencing blackouts ever, since 16, 17, 18 years old. I had started to get the shakes now in my early 20s. I would get up in the mornings. There's a story in the book, I think Dr. Bob's story talks about how, he started to go to class and then he turned around because his hands were shaking. He didn't think he could write. Like, I remember going into class and knowing that I was oozing alcohol, just reeking of alcohol, and sitting on my hands because I would put my hands on my desk and my hands would shake so much. So I'd have to sit on my hands. And going, man, I don't want to be this person. There's no legal troubles. There's nothing. I had one open container thing. I couldn't walk through a park without opening a damn can of beer one time, and a cop pulled up as soon as I did. That was like the extent of my legal problems. All my stuff was what the book talks about: pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Doing stuff I don't want to do, that's contrary to the way that I was brought up, just against everything, and not being the person I want to be. And it just killing me inside to where I couldn't stand to look at myself. So drunk at night that when I stumbled home, frequently having to stick my finger down my throat to puke it all out so that the bed wouldn't spin so much. That was a regular practice of mine. I didn't tell the invisibility story, but I had invisibility powers when I drank. That's another story. Ask later, maybe. But it comes down to Thursday night, January 5th of 1989. I'm in a house again, subletting a room. I've enrolled in school again. I am in my 5th freshman year at my 4th college. It's not easy to do, but I pulled it off. And all the guys I live with, they're out at the bars. It's the first, Thursday night of the quarter, blah, 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 blah. And I'm staying home, man. I'm staying home tonight, and I'm going to study, and it's going to be different this time. And, I don't know. I want to say an hour, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 10. But whatever, later, I'm like, I know I got to go. I got to go out. I'll just go out and I'll just see who's there. But I won't drink. I'll just go out and see who's there. Right? And that's what gets me to go out the door. It's just that lie. I'll just go out and see who's there. And I walk in the bar, and before I know it, there's a beer in my hand, and I guess I'll just have 2, and I'll just see who's here, and then I'll go home. I won't do what I always do. And I end up closing that bar, and it's a college area around University of Cincinnati, and I'm running from bar to bar to bar, closing the bars down. I grab somebody and end up with somebody, and hours later I come out of a blackout, someplace I don't want to be, with somebody I don't want to be with, doing something I don't want to be doing. And fill in your own blanks. That's what it was. I came out of the blackout, and I'm like, what? And I know at that moment that I'm never going to stop this from happening. That this is always going to happen. Except it's going to get worse. I'm going to start to hurt other people in what I'm doing. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. And I get up from where I am and I say, I'll be right back. And I grab my stuff. And I head out to this truck that I had got that I had lied to my mother to get her to buy for me. I'll come visit you if you give me a truck. Unless I wanted her money too. And I get in the truck, and I'm like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I'm crazy. I'm obviously crazy. Only crazy people would do the stuff that I do and live the way that I live. And so my thought is, I'm going to go to this hospital where there's this chaplain that helped our family a lot during the time with my dad. And he works at this hospital. I'm going to go talk to this chaplain, and I'm going to see if this chaplain can get me into the psych ward at the hospital. That's my best plan at 23 years old on Friday morning, I guess, of January 6th, 1989, of what to do with my life. I need to be locked up. And I do. I go there, and I like, John, this is blah, blah, blah. And I just like to tell everything. This is what I do. This is how I live, blah, blah, blah. And I need to be locked up. Who can I talk to? And I don't know if he's the one that directed me, but somehow or another I get directed to, having told my story, the head of the alcohol treatment center. Like, you should actually talk to this guy. Okay. I'm like, whatever. If I can stay, I'll talk to any damn body. I don't care. And so I sit down with this guy, and they pull out this question. There was this, as I recall, a question of a list of 20 questions, yes or no questions. And if you answer yes to one, you might have a problem with alcohol. If you answer yes to 2, you probably have a problem with alcohol. If you answer yes to 3, you should get help. You've got a problem with alcohol. And I answered yes to 19 of the 20 questions. And I'm thinking the 20th was probably like, have you ever been married and lost a marriage? Well, I've never been married. And I'm like, this is the test I've been studying for my whole life. Right here. And so that's like how I found out I'm alcoholic. I'm like, cool. So can I stay? All I want to know is, can I stay? Because it's Friday, and if you make me leave here, I'll be drunk tonight. I'm sure of that as anything. And he says, no, you can't stay. And what I remember him saying was, you don't have insurance, so you can't stay. Which is true. And I said, my mom will pay. My mom will pay for this. You don't let her stay. And that guy said, you should go back to Cincinnati, and you should find an outpatient treatment center based on the 12 steps. He should have said, you should go find an outpatient treatment center based on purple polka-dotted elephants. It would have made just as much. Like, I didn't know what the 12 steps were. I literally did not know what the 12 steps were January 1989. But I heard that guy, and I said, okay. So I go, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I go to my mom's house. She's not home, but my brother's living with my mom. So he's there, and I walk in the door, and he says, what are you doing here? Because that's how I get greeted at this point in my life. It's not, hey, it's good to see you. How you been? What do you want? What do you want? And so I turned to my little brother, 2 years younger than me, and I told him what I've been doing. And I've been at the hospital trying to get locked up, and to get help with my drinking. My brother looks at me and says, can't you quit drinking on your own? And I said, no, I can't quit drinking on my own, man. I'd been trying to quit drinking on my own for the past 4 years. That's the thing. During all that time when I'm drinking insanely, I'm trying to not drink. I'm trying to not drink, man. And every 2, 3 days, 4, 5 days, whatever, a couple of weeks, maybe a month, I drink. It's just always on again. Because I am not okay just not drinking. I'm never not okay just not drinking. It never works. So, my brother, you can't quit drinking on your own? No, man, I can't quit drinking on my own. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I shake it out on the couch that weekend. I go down to Cincinnati. This was in the day of phone books. I get in the phone book. I call alcohol treatment centers up. Do you have an outpatient treatment center based on the 12 steps? This is what the guy told me to say. And one of them said yes. And I said, I've been told I need to go there. Okay. So get an appointment. I get to go there. And that treatment center met 3 nights a week for 6 weeks. And I learned some stuff there that was helpful to me. But the biggest thing that they did was they told me I had to go to 2 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous a week. I was like, okay. So I got to do 6 weeks of treatment and 2 AA meetings a week. So, okay, where do you go? Where are AA meetings? And tell you about going into my first AA meeting. Was at the 405 Oak Street Clubhouse in Cincinnati. It's this big Victorian house that I say looks like the Addams Family house as you're walking up to it as a scared new guy. And I walk into it, and it's back when meetings were full of smoke, and it's a bunch of scary people in there, and it's loud, and I don't like any of them. And I go, and there's a chair over, and one of the guys from treatment was in there, and the chair was empty next to him, so I sat down next to that guy. And they start their meeting, and they say, is anybody here for their first AA meeting? And I look at that guy, and he looks at me, and I'm like, I'm not telling these people anything. I'm not. Why would I give you that information? Nope. That's how I came to Alcoholics. You told me to go to 2 meetings a week. I went to my first meeting. I listened to this guy tell his story. I didn't get anything out of it. I still remember the guy. His name was Daryl. I used to tell him that he was the speaker of my first AA meeting. He's like, God, I can't believe you're still sober. Me too. Meeting ends. They all get up and hold hands, say some prayer, and I head for the door. And some guy whose sponsor probably told him to do it stops me and sticks his hand out and says, hey, I'm so-and-so. And I said, hey, I'm Pat, and I'm leaving. And I was gone. That was it. That was my first AA meeting. Did not come here, did not find my solution, did not fall in love with you people, was not like, oh, I'm home at last. None of that. But I've been told to go to 2 a week along with my treatment, so I just kept showing up. And somehow over that time, I started to hear you all share in a way that was different than any kind of sharing I'd ever heard. Even this whole deal, like me wearing the coat, this is like kind of out of respect for Alcoholics Anonymous and the old people of AA from a long time ago who believed that it was important to be respectful of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And now I'm one of the old people of AA. And so you stand up at the meeting and you talk at a podium and you wear a coat and probably a tie, and you use clean language and proper language, and you treat Alcoholics Anonymous with respect like it's the thing that maybe saved your life. And I started to hear that kind of stuff in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it started to sink in. And I started to get some hope that maybe you people used to drink like me, and maybe you don't anymore, and maybe you're even okay with it, which I hadn't experienced that yet. That part of the not drinking and being okay with not drinking, with living sober. How do you do that? I quit drinking 1,000 times, man, but I don't know how to live sober. How do you live sober? So that's what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to get bugged by people because I would show up. I was young and I had hair on top of my head when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I went to Young People's meeting. There was, Young People's was thriving in Cincinnati. Thriving. And I went to Young People's meetings because there were a lot of cute girls there. And it was a lot of fun, and I didn't relate to people that looked like this when I was 23 years old. I just didn't. I didn't want to be around them. Why would I talk to you? How would you understand anything that I'm going through? But Young People's meetings were everywhere, and I went to them, and they were serious about their alcoholism. They were serious about their recovery, and they talked about having a home group and having a service commitment and having a sponsor and what step are you on. And they talked about the Young People's activities, and there was a thing called Cincy Pa. And Cincy Pa was going on, and you need to go to Cincy Pa. I'm like a month sober, and I go to this thing because they told me to, and they had a big dance going, a bunch of sober people jumping around and dancing. I'm scared to death of that. And I run into my friend Matt, who Matt was crazy. You've met Matt. Matt was in high school with me, and he used to do this thing out on the gym floor, just for no appropriate reason, this gator thing, some kind of, I don't know what you call it, spasm all over the thing, and his parents shipped him off to one of those scared straight deals. So he got sober 3 or 4 years before I did, and I knew he was sober. And I would see him from time to time because he lived in Cincinnati when I was drinking. He's like, man, we should go hang out. And I would hold up a 12-pack of beer and say, yeah, come on, let's hang out. And he wouldn't hang out with me. So there he was at that Young People's thing. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. They said I should go. And that's kind of what it was. I would show up at stuff because they told me I should go. And I shared the other night about they told me I should go to this thing. This old guy was talking, and this was Clancy. Was coming to talk at the Kentucky State Convention, and I went and I heard Clancy talk, and I'm 40-some days sober. I didn't know Clancy from anybody, but he's a guy who was sober for a really long time and was as famous as a sober drunk and anonymous drunk can be, but a very charismatic speaker. And I heard that guy talk, and I thought, man, I would someday like to be enthusiastic about Alcoholics Anonymous like that old guy. As I looked back and did some research recently, he was 2 years older than I am now. And actually wasn't as sober as long as I am now when I heard him talk. For God's sakes. Yeah. So, I am old, is what I'm saying. And I'm enthusiastic about Alcoholics Anonymous. And it just was showing up and doing stuff, and I got tired of them asking me if they had a sponsor. So I figured if I get a sponsor, they'll quit asking me. So this guy, Greg, seemed to be happy, seemed to be involved in stuff, seemed to have a life. I didn't have a life. I wasn't super happy. I certainly wasn't involved. So I asked this guy, Greg. He had a sponsor who'd done stuff out of the big book. Apparently there's a whole program of recovery contained in the big book. So we got into that. Not this line-by-line thing that we do nowadays. It's kind of become more popular, but just more of these are the steps, and we're going to work the steps, boom, 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 boom. And he got me 1 through 5, and then we kind of drifted apart. And then I discovered Girls and Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got a little crazy. And I got another sponsor. John. John became my sponsor because we were sitting around one night at this guy's house, and John shared something about what he used to do when he was drinking and drugging that was more disgusting and depraved than anything I even thought about doing. Of course, I had a lot of blackouts, so I can't swear, but and he laughed about it, and he was just free. And I was doing stuff sober at the time that I wasn't free about and I wasn't laughing about. And I was like, I need some of that freedom. And so I asked John, and so John took me all the way through the steps and was super helpful to me. And I'll never forget that. and he walked with me through a lot of craziness and stuff that I did, sober. I have created a good deal of harm and chaos in my sober life, especially as a young person in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a AA girl, my God's will that I found in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we got engaged because one night I was just like, we should get married. And she's like, okay. And that was our plan. And that didn't work out, and I was suicidal and all that stuff, and very dramatic. And, it's just part of the experience. It's just part of the experience. The good news is she had a sponsor, I had a sponsor, so we could retreat to our corners and kind of that should work out. And it was growing up in Alcoholics Anonymous because I didn't have any growing up skills. So somehow about 3.5 years into being sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, working the steps with John, having a home group, having service commitments, it was so different back then. But it was, man. I would hang out at that Oak Street clubhouse, and I would just be sitting there and with nothing to do that evening, because that's me. And somebody would walk up and go, "What are you doing?" "Nothing." "Well, come on. We're going to the jail." "Okay." "It's a speaker meeting." "Oh, who's speaking?" "You are." I mean, you didn't have to have background checks or any of that kind of stuff. They just dragged you into these meetings. "We're going to the psych ward. We're going to the detox. We're going to the prison." And they just would take you places, and then eventually you'd get your own commitments at these places. I had my Friday meeting at the Cat House Detox. It was so low bottom, and those people were so medicated. They had no idea what was going on. But I would grab people and get them to come and talk at the Cat House. And I had one time, a few years later, this guy shared, and he was like this big deal, dressed up like me, thinking he was something. And he's like, "I was in the Cat House." And I was like, you are a depraved person. It was just, but it was great. And what I found doing all that stuff was, I'm just like everybody that was in those meetings I was going to, man. I'm not any better just because I'm walking in and taking the meeting in there and then walking out. I'm just like them. And I got to know the guys, the men, the women, whatever, that were in those meetings. And I got to hear my own story coming back to me. Just because I didn't get caught didn't make me any different, any better, any of that. It knocked down all that stuff, all those barriers. And it was great. It was great. So suiting up and showing up was something I learned. And somehow or another, 3.5 years sober, I ended up graduating from college. Just because I showed up on a regular basis. I sat up in the front row on time, maybe early, listened, paid attention, took notes, da-da-da-da-da-da. Before you know it, they hand you a degree because they're like, "You've taken all the classes." "Oh, okay." I was working in a restaurant again, making sandwiches, and now I had a college degree and I was making sandwiches, and I didn't really have any plan. I was just like, cool, this is fine. And I was happy, man. I was happy. Alcoholics Anonymous, working in my life. The girl didn't work, but whatever. And my brother comes down, and I had made amends, so I'm not giving you a blow-by-blow on the 12 steps to Alcoholics Anonymous, so it's a big deal, and you ought to work them. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. My brother comes down, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to move out of Mom's house." I'm like, "Well, you're 25. It's about time." And he says, "I'm going to get a place up in Dayton. Do you want to come up and live with me?" And again, I had made amends to my brother, back in the early days of my sobriety, and so we were clear, and all was good, and I was like, what a great opportunity to go up there and live. I'm going to go up there and live for a year with my brother. And I show him that I'm a different person. Alcoholics Anonymous has changed me, and this will be great. So I tell the sandwich guy, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go to Dayton. So I go up to Dayton, and it's like an hour north of Cincinnati. It wasn't this big move. But I did. I left, my home group, my sponsor. I had to find a new home group, new sponsor, all that stuff. And I land up in Dayton and, go to a temp agency to get a job. Because that's how you, back in the day anyway, that's how you just would go get a job. Go to a temp agency. Got to have a job. Got to pay your bills. So I'd learned that much. I didn't have to go get cash under the table jobs anymore. So I got a job doing second shift data entry. Claire did the same thing. She had gotten a temp job. She had moved back home with her parents. So we were both on winning streaks. And so anyway, so that's how we were both doing second shift data entry temp work, and that's how I met the girl of my dreams. And we went to a concert. I invited her to go to this Bruce Springsteen concert down in Lexington, which is like an hour and a half south of Dayton. And we had 4 tickets, so my buddy Greg, another guy in AA, and a friend of his, they went too. So the 4 of us go. We're in my car, they're in theirs, whatever. Springsteen shows are long. They have an intermission. So Claire and I, this is pretty much like our first date, really. Ish. I don't know. Intermission, we meet up with Greg and his friend. Greg's friend says, I'm going to go get a beer. Anybody wants anything to drink? Greg and I are like, nah, we're good. And Claire's like, I'll get a beer with you. And so she goes off to get a beer. And Greg turns to me and goes, so, did you tell her you're in AA? I'm like, no, dude. Why would I tell her I'm in AA? I am trying to, And Greg says, oh, yeah, that's what I did when I moved out of town. Actually, he moved to Salt Lake City, in the funny part of the story. But yeah, that's what I did when I went to Salt Lake City. I would date women. I didn't tell them I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I ended up getting drunk. And I was like, damn. I don't want to be drunk like Becker. I don't want to be drunk like that guy. So I'm like, I guess I got to tell her. So after the Springsteen show, we got an hour and a half ride back home in my little pickup truck with no real radio. Got like a boom box in the seat. That was my radio. Because, I brought a lot to the relationship. So I tell her that I'm alcoholic. I'm sober. I'm sober in AA, whatever, coming up on 4 years at that point in time. That I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, that I have to do this, and it's got to be the most important thing in my life. If I don't continue to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, I won't stay sober, and I won't have a life, da-da-da-da-da. She's like, oh, I really appreciate your honesty. And I'm just trying not to drink. I'm just trying not to get drunk. But it was great, and she was very open to it. She didn't kick me out and say, I never want to see you again. I don't want anything to do with a drunk or anything like that. She was very open-minded and willing to actually go to AA meetings with me and meet my AA friends, and it's been a huge part of our life for the past 30-plus years. Alcoholics Anonymous has been. So I'm really grateful to Greg that he got drunk and had that experience so that I didn't have to, actually. So obviously I get a home group, I get a sponsor, I get service commitments in Dayton. We end up having 2 beautiful daughters while we're there. I end up changing jobs, losing a job, having a business that failed, got to get a job, couldn't find a job. We end up moving to Oklahoma. We have experiences. I go to Oklahoma. The cool thing about that, actually, when we were in Oklahoma, we moved across the street from this guy who became my sponsor. The only guy I knew in Oklahoma was this guy, Dave. And I hunt him down. God, it's getting late already. Sorry. I hunt Dave down in the state of Oklahoma, and I'm like, hey, man. And I call him up. I'd been there a week. I had maybe gone to 1 meeting. I'd never been that far away from my network of people in my sober time. And this, I'm like 15, 16 years sober. I call Dave up, and I'm shaky right now. I'm like, I'm alone. I don't know anybody here. I don't know what to do. Except to reach out to another alcoholic. And Dave's like, well, I'm at work. I can't meet with you right now, but here is Tim's phone number. Call Tim, and Tim will help you. Tim was a guy that Dave sponsored. I call Tim up, and I tell Tim, what's up? And Tim is a great example of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's like, okay, cool. He said, I don't know what to do either. I said, treat me like a new guy, Tim. So what would you tell a new guy if he called you right now? He's like, well, it's actually my sponsorship night. I'm having guys I sponsor over to my house, so here's my address. Come over to my house and meet with me and the guys I sponsor. I was like, thank you. So these guys welcomed me, Tim welcomed me into his home, around his family, didn't know me from anybody, and saved my life there, too. I ended up asking Dave to sponsor me. I ended up looking for a house to live in. The house across the street from Dave was for sale. I buy the house across the street from my sponsor. I don't recommend that at all. It was so awkward. It was great for my family, I think, but I hated it. Like, what if I didn't want to go to the meeting? Awful. We didn't live there that long, so it was okay. But Dave's sponsor was a guy named Johnny. Johnny's sponsor was Clancy. So Clancy, that guy who I'd heard speak when I'm like 40 days sober, became my grand sponsor for a few years. So that was kind of cool. And I got to meet him one time and tell him about that. He's like, yeah, that's really cool, kid. He didn't care. Probably hear stories like that all the time. So we just did Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had this band of enthusiastic drunks in Kansas City. We moved up there, and they were over at our house all the time. We were over at this guy Colby's house all the time. We just did stuff together, and it was great. Colby had a van, and we'd ride to meetings together and all sorts of stuff. And they called us the Johnson County Boys, and it was not a compliment. They didn't like seeing us coming. They thought we were going to change their meetings. Because by then I had, this is my prop. This is my 1989 big book that's held together with a rubber band and not very well. So by then I've got probably a reputation of I'm like a big book thumper. The big book saved my life. I don't know what else to say. So I believe in the big book and what it says. And so we would show up and with our big books and talk about Alcoholics Anonymous in the big book. So we had a cool experience there, and then we moved to Arizona, and then we moved to Houston. And 6 years ago we came to Utah. And I'm probably skipping over a bunch of stuff, but I like to share how I came to this home group. I discovered the Saturday night uni meeting, back to institution-type meetings. And I used to love to go to the Saturday night uni meeting. And they had, as I recall, like maybe 2 speakers or something like that. I don't know. I think 2 speakers that they would do at the uni meeting on Saturday nights. And I was going there and hanging out and kind of being a little bit involved in it. It wasn't my home group, but it was just an institution meeting I like to go to on Saturday nights. And one Saturday night, these 2 guys came and spoke, and they were both younger and enthusiastic guys, and they talked about the 12 Steps Alcoholics Anonymous and sponsorship and home group and service, and I was attracted to what they talked about. And I wasn't especially in love with where I was going to my meetings at the time. And I was like, so I walked up to these guys, and I was like, where do you guys go to meetings? And they pulled out a printed directory, and they circled and marked up their meetings where they went to, and one of them went to this group, went to an AA group on Monday nights. And I was like, okay. So I came and checked it out. And this is, I love the structure of this group. I love what this group tries to be and comes so close to being, and yet we're just goofy enough that we miss it, man. We are, and I love that. Like, we're not perfect. Like, the guys in Oklahoma took themselves so seriously. They literally, this wouldn't have been good enough for them. I would have had to have a tie on and whatever. My shoes would have been wrong or something. But we're serious, and yet we have a lot of fun here. And I love the structure. I love the format of the meeting. I love the discussion of the steps. We were talking about it at dinner, and we're not afraid to talk about the steps. We're not afraid to talk about a higher power and the grace of God and any of that kind of stuff. And that we talk about the traditions and the concepts. And I was telling somebody, I've been coming here for 5 years, and I still don't know what the concepts are. I still don't. But I love to hear them, and whenever you're talking about them, I was like, that's my favorite concept. No idea which one it is. So I love that I get to be a part of this home group. I love the fellowship that I've found here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I believe if I leave Alcoholics Anonymous, I for sure as heck will drink again. If I'm lucky, I'll drink and die soon. But I don't believe that that's in the cards for me, So I stick around Alcoholics Anonymous, because I believe that I have to be here. I stick around Alcoholics Anonymous because I owe a debt to the people that were there when I showed up. I'll never forget, they had noon meetings on the campus at University of Cincinnati, and lots of times it was me and 2 other guys. And I was the new guy, And those guys showed up and sat there and talked to me. And I'll never be able to pay that back entirely. But I love you guys. I love you people in Alcoholics Anonymous. You are my people. I know I'm unrelatable and old and overdressed, but I love my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know. I'm running out of stuff to say, and I got a million things I want to say all at the same time. But in meetings back in Ohio, we used to close with the last couple paragraphs from A Vision for You. And so I'm going to close my talk, if I may, with this. On page 164 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So, thanks very much.